know it's a big week when he's here.
Yeah, I know. Sean shows up. Most the curious times. Okay. Just appreciate everybody being here. Just recap the weekend. I think it's really important. I first just really want to thank our fans. What an incredible environment. Third largest crowd in Canvas history. And I thought the atmosphere and the energy of our student section was outstanding. And just really want to salute them and just let our students and fans know how important that is to our team. I was really, really taken aback by the John Mosley ceremony. Very proud to be a part of it, that our team could be a part of it. And I thought that it was a tremendous tribute to John and his family, and what an incredible family. We gave out 3 game balls for the game. We gave one to Eric Mosley, John's son, and an incredible man in his own right. We gave one to John Matsusima, who is probably our greatest living fan here at CSU. He's touched so much of our history here. 103 years old, been a season ticket holder for 65 years. He was actually a classmate of John Mosley and sat in class with him. And he actually was involved with Phil McGraw about starting Ag Day. And so really important figure in our history. And then the last game ball was for John Weber, our new athletic director, and our administrative staff was fantastic in getting the game set up, the atmosphere at the game, the different changes on game day, I thought were really, really brought a lot of energy to what we're looking at here. And I thought it showed what we're capable here at CSU. When I learned about John Mosley and, what he had to do, becoming one of the first Tuskegee Airmen in a time of segregation, I just really thought he must be proud of where we are here today at CSU and all the different things that we're doing. Last summer, our administration allowed me to start the Jay Norvell Minority Internship Program, where we give a young minority coach an opportunity to coach full-time here. Back in John Mosley's day, he couldn't even stay in the same hotel with his team when they traveled. And to see where we are today, I'm very proud. We have one of the most diverse rosters in the country. National reporters have come here to do stories on our roster because we have players from Australia, a punter from Australia. We got a kicker, 32-year-old kicker from Great Britain. We got a Japanese sumo wrestler. We got people from all over the world, not just the country, on this roster. And it makes it a very, very unique and special place. So very, very proud of that. As far as the game is concerned, I'm really happy the improvement that we made as a team. There's a lot of improvement between week 1 and week 2. I think the biggest area for us was in mental errors. You have some first game jitters. Guys are a little bit, not focused on the details of what they need to accomplish. We really cut the mental errors down in this second game. Our tackling was much improved. Tackling in space is something you don't get to do much in training camp. I thought our defense tackled very well, and we broke more tackles offensively. We had over 200 yards rushing. I think we had over 180 yards after contact. And so that was a huge improvement for our football team. And, we gave a game ball to Kenyon Agers, young defensive end who's really coming into his own. And we gave another game ball, 5 of them actually, to our 5 starting offensive linemen and Coach Best, our offensive line coach. What a fabulous job our line did, and they continue to improve. We're really excited to come back and play at home again this week. One of the things about this season is that we play 4 teams from the Front Range. We just played Northern Colorado, and this is the second one we get to play in Colorado. The Rocky Mountain Showdown is this week. We're playing in Canvas Stadium, first time on campus since 1996. First time in Canvas Stadium, which is our gem of a stadium, which we're very proud of here. Playing for the Centennial Cup, and it's always a special thing to play in a rivalry game, and this is certainly one of those. And our kids know how important it is to play in a game like this. As far as CU is concerned, very similar to last year in the personality of their team and the strengths of their team. Everything starts with their offense and their quarterback, and they're very, very capable of being very explosive. They have a lot of speed at wide receiver with Hunter and Horn and Wester. They mostly attack through the air, and everything goes through the quarterback, through Sanders. And so we're going to have to do a good job of containing that. They can be explosive, and when they make explosive plays, they're very hard to slow down. And I thought Nebraska did a nice job against them. And, they have a new coordinator, Pat Shermer. He's a very experienced coordinator. I've known Pat a long time, and so he's got a very diverse scheme that we have to be prepared for. Defensively, they have a new defensive coordinator, Robert Livingston, very experienced, comes from the National Football League. They really have built this defense to rush the passer and play man coverage, and that's what they do. They play a lot of man, and they try to rush the passer. Obviously I'm very impressed with Travis Hunter, and was impressed with him last year, but really dynamic player, playing at a high level, and really am impressed with number 20, their inside linebacker, Levante Bentley. I think he's a fabulous player. Plays downhill, very explosive. We have a team that has got to get better every week. We have a lot of young players that are helping some very experienced players, but those young players are key to our success. We build our program on grit, fundamentals, physicality, and effort, and we got to have that every day we go on the field. And, we have a lot of respect for Colorado. We have a lot of respect for what they're capable of doing as a team. They have a lot of talented players and experienced coaches. And, the team that is prepared, that plays the best on Saturday and makes the least amount of mistakes will win the game. And that's certainly something that we're working to prepare to do.
Jay, you've been through a lot of these rivalry games, no matter where they are. They're all different, but is there a formula you found for keeping the focus on the game and maybe tapping into the outside energy?
Yeah, I think first of all, there's just naturally going to be energy, okay? And when you play a passionate rivalry game, there's going to be energy. I think we have to do a better job of controlling that and really focusing it the proper way. We had too many penalties last year. We had a team meeting today, and we kind of framed the game and talked about last season. We lost a double overtime game where we had 18 penalties. We had 4 turnovers, 2 in the red zone. We had 3 touchdowns called back. Okay, and so you just can't win games that way. And it was still a double overtime game, and a game that we should have won. And so we have to correct those areas, and we have to be better. We've got to be better at the end of the game. Most games come down to the last 4 minutes, where you either have to seal it or steal it. That's just it. You got to seal the game by 4 minutes. We've worked very hard at that. We had an opportunity. We had a 4-minute situation at the end of this last game, and I told our offense, I said, we've been working on this all off season. Let's move the ball down. Let's get first downs, and I'd like to finish the game with the ball in our hands, and we did run it down and score. Great effort by Avery Morrow to get the ball in the end zone at the end, but we have to learn how to finish games like that, and that's important that we can run the ball in those situations. We got to play well at the end of the game in a 2-minute situation. So, those are the things that we have to learn from. I think we have a much more mature team. I think we're wiser and I think we have a better plan.
How do you convince 18 to 22-year-olds to use the emotion and channel it in the right way?
No, I mean, I think the one thing that as a coach you learn is that there's going to be emotion and there's passion, and that's part of the game, and we need that. You got to play with an edge and physicality, but it's got to be funneled the right way. And so, I think we'll learn from that from last year's game. I think we'll have an incredible environment in Canvas. I thought last week was great, and I think this week will be even better, just because of the nature of the opponent and the game, and we've been looking forward to it.
Coach, do you have an update on Torrey?
Torrey is sore, but I think he's going to be available to play. So we'll see how he progresses over the week. He's got a groin strain, and I was never fast enough to get a groin strain, but fast guys get groin strains. But Torrey, he's worked really hard to build his body up, and he was like shot out of a cannon on that punt return last week, and we're hopeful that he's able to play. I was proud of Braden this past week. Braden really handled the game plan well, spread the ball around to 10 different receivers, didn't turn the ball over. So, it's going to be important. Not only Torrey's ready to play, but all of our skilled guys are ready to contribute.
What type of growth have you seen out of Braden from a game management perspective? It looks like he checked down.
I thought he was really showed a lot last week, and I don't know. He probably checked 10 or 11 plays and got us into good runs, and he's certainly capable of doing that. What we're doing is really like an NFL offense. He's got to really manage the run game as well as the pass game. We're putting more on his plate that way. And, a lot of things that don't show up in the stat line. And leading his team and not turning the ball over, protecting the ball, and making sure that we are in a position to score. I think that's the most important job of a quarterback. And he showed a lot of maturity, and I'm really proud of him.
How encouraging was it to see some of the success of the run lead to success in play action? Because you had the rushing touchdown from Braden and the deep shot both on play action.
Yeah, the play action is part of what we're trying to get done, and you do that by running the ball effectively. And we rushed for 6.2 attempt this past game, which is a big goal of ours to do that well. And so we're really we want to build on that. We're trying to build a rugged team. We want to be a rugged team in all phases, a physical team that really uses its playmakers, and that's an example of the growth that we've made.
Jay, obviously we talked about there's not going to be a lack of energy in this game, but just knowing, obviously you mentioned you showed the guys kind of the mistakes from last year, just knowing that all those guys are back and things like that they're going to be hungry, knowing that they probably should have won that game last year to get a win again this time around.
Yeah, I think you learn every time you play, and you learn more from your losses than you do your wins, really. And so, we've talked a lot about that, and we learned a lot from last year's game, and we have a bigger sample size on them too. We know what they are, we know who they are, we know what they're trying to do, and so that's a better understanding for us. So I just think it'll help us moving forward. But we always try to learn from every game, and I think we learned a lot from that game last year.
You talked a lot in the past that it's hard being a college athlete these days with social media and everything. Obviously, in a week like this, it can be amplified. Do you talk at all, guys, on sort of how to try and keep the blinders on, or?
Yeah, we've talked a lot. You'd be amazed at what we talk about in our meetings. Really. It's probably very different than what you think. We've talked a lot about what we can control as a team. And, I think it's difficult for young people because there's so much information out there, and it's all designed to get you to react to something, okay? And you guys are in that business, the reaction business. Some of you are more into it than others. I won't mention any names. But anyway, we're living in a time where obviously social media and technology is a big part of our lives. And if we don't understand how that works, it can really kind of take over your life a little bit. I saw a stat last week where 870,000 people get on social media every day and start thinking that they're going to be social influencers. And the thing about it is now is that majority of social media is controlled by AI. It's all computers. And so an individual that gets on there thinking they're going to influence the world is probably very unlikely. It's going to be a computer somewhere. So don't get all excited about the headlines you see and all that stuff on social media. I think we've tried to educate our kids about that. We want them to be mature, but more importantly, I mean, we spend a third of our life sleeping. What are you going to do with the other 2/3 of your life? And are you going to let other people dictate that, or are you going to dictate it? And so, that's what we want our kids to do. We want our kids to be the very best that they can be. And so we focus on what can we do every day to put ourselves in position to be our very best. And, I was pretty upset last week during the game. I couldn't really be around many people on the sideline because I want our guys to be great. I want them to be great, and I know we have so much potential to do that. And this is an important step this week for us to realize that.
Do you think there's some human nature your players knew what game was coming next? Did you feel any of that kind of
Yeah, we all knew what game was coming next. I'm not different than they are in that. And we're looking forward to this game. There's really only, the only thing we can do is play well. That 3 hours that we're on the field on Saturday. The rest of it doesn't matter. We can talk about it all we want. We can put stuff on social media and respond and write articles and all that. It don't really matter. The only thing that matters is those 3 hours that we get to play, and that'll happen at 5:30.
You mentioned a little bit that you felt like you talked to Matt. You've lost a little bit of your tempo. Is it almost imperative you get some of that back for this game?
I don't know that that's would be accurate to say. I think we have the opportunity to play very tempos, and we gotta have to be better that way. I'll just say it that way. And it's like a pitcher. I mean, you don't just throw fastballs all the time, and you got to throw change-ups. You got to throw curves. You got to keep people off balance, and you got to back them up sometimes. That's part of it too. So I mean, yeah, we'll continue to work that and perfect that, and I think as you go through the season, you grow as a team, and we'll certainly work on that and get better.
But in that analogy, a pitcher always knows he's at his best when he has his fastball, right?
You got to have a fastball. You got to have a fastball you can hang your hat on, yes. But we have a lot of tools in our toolkit that we want to perfect as we go, and we don't use them all every week, but you kind of pull them out when you need to, and you need to be effective playing at different speeds.
You mentioned '96. Sonny was the coach at that time. I think he had more success than others against CU. What do you think about him during the game?
Oh yeah. No, I think of Sonny all the time, and he's told me a lot of stories about these games, and it's good to get that kind of perspective, but these are the games you remember, when you get done playing, when you get done coaching, you think about these rivalry games, and been part of a lot of them, and this one's unique. It's really unique, but it means a lot to the people in the state. It means a lot to our alumni. It means a lot to our fan base, and it means a lot that it's here in Fort Collins and in Canvas Stadium. They're supposed to play here a couple years ago. The game was canceled because of COVID, and I just think there's a lot of anticipation and excitement about playing this game in Canvas. We got a special stadium. I mean, it was special Saturday for those of you that were here. It was big time college football environment, and I think that's what we're capable here at CSU, and I'm proud to be a part of it, and I'm looking forward to Saturday.
Jay, was that kind of a reminder? You mentioned the atmosphere you guys had Saturday and what will obviously come this Saturday. Is that kind of a reminder of why you wanted to take this job?
There's no question. It's why I came here, to be a part of games like that, atmospheres like that, and also, for this community. We love this community. We represent this community. We're proud to travel all over the country and represent CSU. And, when we play, we want people to see the respect that we have. We want them to see that we're accountable for what we do, that how hard we play, that we have a team that runs and hits. We want to play good football, and that's what we've been working hard to build here. And, this is another important step for us.
Pass rush will be important this week. Do you get Newer back as well?
Yeah, I don't know that Nura will be back this week. It's unlikely that he will be back. And that's why it's so important, the development of kids like, Kenyon Agers and Gabe Kurtzky and, Mukende's playing so well. So, those guys are going to continue to get opportunities. We got to do a great job with our pass rush. We got to keep this quarterback in the pocket. And we got to push. We got to get vertical push inside. He's a drop back passer in his nature. And so we got to do a good job of keeping him in the pocket. He got out late on us a couple times last year, and those were big plays in the game, and we got to do a good job of hemming them up.
With Colorado's speed and playmaking ability, how do you plan on keeping the defense disciplined all the way to the end, so
Yeah, I think they might have faster receivers than Texas. I mean, those kids can all run. We got to do a good job of playing good, solid pass defense. They haven't really hurt people much with the running game, so that's what they want to do. And we have to do a good job of understanding how they try to attack coverages and how we can defend them. And so that's going to be a big part of the game is not giving them explosive plays.
Coach, you mentioned in your opening that there's a lot of similarities to last year's team with Colorado. And I know offensively with Shador, they're doing a lot of the same stuff. But defensively, new coordinator on that side too, a lot of new guys up front. Do you see anything differently on defense from Colorado compared to last year in how you're going to be?
Well, I can only speak about the first two games they've played. But Livingston he's an experienced coach, and he's got a lot of great experiences in the National Football League and with the Bengals. They've played under and over. They play a little odd, and they played a lot of man coverage. That's what they've done so far. Now they sprinkle in some Tampa 2 and 3rd and long, but that's what they've shown that they've want to do. Now they're capable of playing other things, and they're capable of showing other things, but that's what they've shown so far. And so, they seem to want to be pretty simple, and and we have to be prepared for all the things that they're capable of doing. And we've studied a lot of their tape of the coordinators in different places they've been, so we know what they're capable of doing. But very similar personality team that we played a year ago as far as schematically.
Jay, does what was said before the game and after last year's game, does that carry over at all into
It's a very different year. It's a very different year, and the circumstances are completely different. I will say this, this is an emotional game. It has been for well before I ever came to CSU, and before this season. And there's been a lot of bad blood, over the years in this game. But rivalries are what make college football special. And really it's insignificant. The things that happen that surround the game really don't affect the game. It's what happens on the field that matters. And so that's all we're focused on. I'm glad that Travis is healthy, after last year. Him and Henry had an exchange after the game. They're kids. These are college kids that are in college to play football, and there's no ill feelings or bad blood in any of that. So, we're going to keep our focus on playing the game, and we're excited to play the game here, and it should be a great game.
I've been in so many of these games. There's a tricky balance, as you mentioned, between the emotions and the rivalries and what that means. Do you hope that the fans keep safety and decorum in mind while also enjoying that, because there's so much of, and again, you played
Oh, yeah.
played and coached so many big games.
Yeah.
There's a tipping point where you want to keep it all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rivalry games, and I just hear stories of some of the old, Rocky Mountain Showdowns in Denver and Mile High and tear gas and all that kind of stuff. We don't really need that. It's a college football game. Everybody should have fun. Fans yell at the other team. That's part of it. There's probably going to be some ill words said. That's part of it. But as far as physical harm or violence, we don't want anybody to get hurt. And it's a football game, and all that other stuff is just part of the game. All the words that are said, and I'm sure there'll be some of that. And so, and I'd probably be disappointed if there wasn't, to be honest with you. So, but that's part of the game, And when we go on the road, we have to deal with it. And we get 7 home games this year, and we want it to be a tough environment. So, and I thought it was a great environment last week, and I expect it to be even better this week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
How hard is it to tap into the emotions of the game in a positive way and not let them carry you away?
Yeah, obviously in a heated rivalry game, right, I think it's really important to be able to keep your head and, not let your emotions control you and get the better of you. And, last year, you can kind of see that, and last year, but, we want to play a clean game with no penalties, and that's what football is all about, is, keeping your head when things get tough, and where it could go south, we want to be able to just focus and just have no penalties.
Yeah, I think it just being an older team, we expect a more mature, groups to go out there and, like Jack said, not have as many penalties.
Jack, as a Colorado kid, this game's important to you, obviously, but this is the first time it's been on campus in a long time before does that give you an extra layer for this game?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, last year is a very hostile environment. Boulder has a great crowd, and they made the game day super fun, and obviously a lot of media platforms were there, so that was huge, and obviously that was something hard to overcome. And this year it's at home, and that makes us feel a lot more comfortable, and we're excited to be able to put on a good show in front of our fans. And we had a great crowd last week, and I know everyone's super excited for this week, so we just want to go out there and play for them.
Jacob, for you, obviously, there's a lot of new personnel for CU on the defensive line that you'll be going against. I mean, throughout what you've seen so far from them in the first two games, what's maybe different about some of the guys that they've brought in as opposed to what you remember going up against last year?
No doubt. A lot of their D-line, they look a little bit twitchy. I'm real excited. They kind of line up in some of the same stuff, so a lot of it's kind of the similar scheme. But I think heading out there, we'll be prepared.
Jacob, what did Saturday mean for you guys as an offensive line to dominate the ground game like that?
Yeah, the stats were good. As a group, we're always looking for to do things better. So that's been a big week, or a big emphasis this week is having that chemistry, keep building the chemistry. We got 3 guys from last year, but interior-wise, I'm playing again. I'm playing with 2 new guys. So a lot of it's just figuring out chemistry, and that every week you need to be better and prepare more, and that's what we've been doing.
Jack, obviously, pass rush is imperative this game to help you guys in the back end.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't had newer, but your young guys, especially on the ends, have played well. What's impressed you about the way Gabe's played, Kenyon, McKinney?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's next man up, right? And we really want to have Noor, and he's obviously a huge physical presence, and obviously we really want to have that back. And when he's back, people will see how good he is, and he'll remind them. But in the meantime, we have Noor and Gabe. And some of those younger guys are really stepping up, and it's been really impressive. It's nice to be able to have a pass rush, and so the quarterback's got to get the ball out. And that's what we're really trying to establish here at CSU, is just a culture where guys have to step up, and when their number's called, they're ready. And those guys have done a really good job showing that.
What are you seeing out of Gabe right now? He had a sack week 1. He had a couple hits on the quarterback in this one. Just what type of growth have you seen out of him?
Yeah, I mean, he just works really hard. He came in here immediately, and he doesn't talk much. He keeps his head down, and I know Gabe a little bit better because we played high school together, and family friends. But he's a good kid, and he works really hard, and what he's been doing is really impressive, and we're going to keep needing it from him this year.
Jacob, a lot of people talk about balance, and I think it can be a misconception that it's supposed to be like 50-50 play calling, but I think it's more about being able to run when you need to, being able to pass when you need to. Do you feel like you guys are getting closer to kind of establishing that?
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, it doesn't need to be 50-50. It's the other team needs to respect both sides of the play call, and I think this being our third game going in, every season you can expect that that mid-season, later season, it's always going to flow easier. You're going to be able to identify like what kind of identities that we have, and be able to use that and not exploit, but be able to have that as a strength going into these future games.
There's a big emphasis on wanting to be able to run the ball when you need to, like execute the 4-minute drill, able to do that in both halves. Like, how satisfying was that, especially from an offensive line standpoint?
Yeah, it was really satisfying being able to run the clock out. But like I said earlier, it's the stats are nice, but we need to keep looking for ways to improve our chemistry and be able to move people off the ball in a more efficient manner.
For both of you guys, is there a personal moment you remember from last year's game that is fueling you for this week? Is it when you guys were walking off the field, in the bus, in the locker room? Like, is there a certain moment that you go back to and use that as motivation?
I think the whole thing really, is kind of disappointing. I think we controlled the game really well last year, and I don't think that the better team won. But that's football, and that's the beauty of the game. But the best thing is we get another chance this year, and obviously, walking off the field and thinking that you did enough, for 58 minutes but not 60 minutes is tough. And we want to have that last drive back, but it is what it is. And they led a great drive down the field, and strung a few plays together that really went their way, and it was good. Is impressive to them, but obviously we're not really going to have to get motivated this week. We've been thinking about this game for a long time, and we're excited to just go out there and play now.
Jack, you've had a lot of newcomers filter in that defense. Were you happy with the growth from week 1 to week 2? Do you expect to see that similar type thing as guys start to get more accustomed to what their role is?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you look at Texas and how good of a football team that is, and they took care of business last week too, and they got a really good running back with Blue, and Quinn Ewers and even Arch Manning, their backup, and their play calling, their schemes are all really good, and but UNC is a good football team too. They're very scrappy and tough, and so guys being able to make adjustments from week 1 to week 2 as far as like tackling and being better in coverage, that's huge. And each week you just want to keep progressing. It doesn't matter who the team is, whether it's Texas, UNC, CU. It doesn't matter. You just want to keep progressing, and it's about how you play football, not about how the other team plays.
Jack, Jay was talking about how the CU wide receivers might even have comparably even better speed than the ones you faced at Texas. I mean, you faced a bunch of those guys last year. There's some new faces. I mean, how important is it going to be for you guys as on the back line to kind of be as sharp as you need to be on a play-to-play basis?
Yeah, I mean, every game, especially at DB, you can't have mental errors. We had one last week and it resulted in a touchdown, and that's what happens in DBs when you don't execute fundamentally. And obviously with a great wide receiver core like they have, Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn, those guys are two really good football players, and we're really excited to play them. And but we got good football players too, and it's cool talking about them. But look at our guys. We got Dom Jones and IE and Elias, and those guys are really good football players, and so the world will get to see that too.
Jake, when you look at the offense last week, obviously the running game takes center stage, but Braden did complete passes to 10 different people. Do you think in the long run that's going to make you a better, more diverse offense, the more people that get their hands involved in the game?
No doubt. I mean, everybody needs to be looking for the ball, and when Braden's out there throwing it to all of his different receivers, it builds confidence, and you can build confidence in practice, but being able to do that in a game, it's a different feeling. And like you said, yes, it will diversify what we're trying to do.
Have you seen some of the young targets, like Caleb, obviously with his game? Armani's new to the offense. Jordan Ross. Have you seen some confidence start to grow where they can be a bigger piece of the offense?
Absolutely. I was real excited to see Caleb catch that on Saturday. Gives me a lot of hope that our younger guys are there, and that they, like I said, they want the ball. So yeah, it excites me.
This is the last rivalry game for a couple of years, so what would it mean to kind of have the last laugh for a little while?
This last in a couple of years?
You don't play CU for 4 more years.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Also, I thought you knew that.
No, I didn't know that. That sucks. I think it should be a yearly tradition, and both fans love it, and it's a heated rivalry game, and that's what people like to see. And obviously last year was super fun, and the world got to see a really good football game and between two good teams. So I mean, obviously, yeah, that's a big deal. If we're not going to play for a while, that sucks. I don't know why it's like that, but yeah.
Do you prefer that it's on campuses? I know you guys didn't get to play in Denver, but it just seems like there's more energy with these type of games on campus.
Yeah, I think you like hostile environments or really friendly environments. Obviously, last year going there was really tough, but we love that, and that's what football's all about. And that now they got to come to Canvas, and I know we got some fired up fans, and we're gonna show packed out and hopefully a sellout, and it'll be a good time.
I mean, are you eager to see that? I mean, you mentioned it was hostile last year, but they haven't come here since '96. There's probably a lot of Ram fans that are pretty eager to
Yeah.
have some steam as well.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's true.
Jack, is this the type of game that you envisioned when you committed here? I mean, I was asking Jay the same thing. This is kind of what he envisioned when he took the job here. Of you've heard all the stories about all the great games from your dad, but this game coming up this week and just kind of the showcase that you guys have for the campus as a whole could be something you were probably thinking about for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a game that you look forward to when you commit to Colorado State. Those big rivalry games. But this takes it a step further, and obviously there's a lot of hype around Colorado every single week, and so it's a huge blessing for us to be able to go and make a name for CSU.
How do you guys keep your confidence high from a win while still staying locked in for the upcoming week?
I think it's job on the leaders to not ride the highs, but not ride the lows either. It's you got to stay in that middle ground, and big wins and losses. You really have to focus on not riding those and being a consistent team.
Do you sense that that's how people are handling it?
I think so. Yeah. After Texas, we moved on. After this week, we're moving on, and we need to prepare for this week.
Curious, how many of these Rocky Mountain Showdowns have you either gone to before, like when you were in high school, when you were growing up?
Mm-hmm.
You always kind of been around this game. Have you seen it being played at different places?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like I went every single year, but I do know it's a very big deal to both sides, and obviously this game means a whole lot to not only just the teams, but the fans as well. And so when you go out there, you're playing for more than just yourself.
But for you Colorado kids, do you think is it hard for you and Chase and Henry to convince Jacob just what it means to you being from here?
Yeah, I was overlooked by CU, and I know it's a different staff, but obviously you still carry some of those feelings with you, right? And so every time I go out on the field, I prepare the same way though, and obviously in those rivalry games there are more emotion, but that just comes naturally. That just comes with game day itself, the way the game's being played. But we're gonna prepare for CU the exact same way we prepare for everyone else.
Double overtime. So many people were watching last year. Is it even? It's like a classic, maybe one of the best ever. Is it even possible to play an even more entertaining game? You think this year?
Well, we're not playing for an entertaining game. We're playing to whoop them, and so I hopefully the fans can still find entertainment in that. But we don't want to make it a double overtime game. We want to win in any means possible, and if that is double overtime or if that's us winning by 30 points, then we're going to do what we have to do.
Braden was saying before the season how last year when game kicking off after 8 o'clock, he kind of felt like he had all. Obviously, for him it was different because it was his first really big start, but he felt like he had all day to kind of sit around and think about it. I know it's still 5:30 this week, but does it feel like maybe you have a little bit less time to kind of just get into the game?
Yeah, I'm not the fan of the late games personally. I don't like sitting around thinking about it all day. Our team spends all week preparing for it, and I'm happy it's a little bit earlier than 8.
Anything else?
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you guys.
Sweet, appreciate it.